Okay, market mashup. In here, first of all, we're going to talk about CMHC and some of the reports that CMHC has just released. Last month, if you recall, we looked at I had mentioned that the Toronto Real Estate Board just released their annual report. We're going to dive into that as well. But let's see what CMHC has to say about some of the 4 different rental areas that a lot of us are buying in or live in, and that's, well, of course, the GTA, Barrie, Kitchener-Waterloo, there's some people that are investing there, and Hamilton. So we're going to look at those 4 areas. So CMHC GTA rental report, and this is right off of their website. I downloaded this report, and we're just going to look at some vacancy rates, some of their average rental rates. One thing to know, what is CMHC always good for? Conservative numbers, right? Because they are a government agency. A lot of banks lean on them for their information. They'll always have conservative numbers, which is to say perhaps this number could be a little bit lower in real life or in our world, right? But still, according to history, I'll tell you, these vacancy rates at 1.21%, that is incredibly low, incredibly historically low. Average rents ranging from, say, 1,000 to over 1,500 for the 3-bedroom units there. Here's what we've seen. So let's talk about condos, sorry, for a moment. And I thought this was kind of staggering. I didn't really understand this until I started reading it more. They're suggesting that 1/3 of all condo apartments are rented out. They're part of the rental pool in the GTA. And it's actually increased ever so slightly over the last couple of years. I thought that was interesting. Why would you say it's such a big number of the total amount of condos? Why would you say 1/3 of them are actually rentals? Any ideas?
No rental buildings.
No rental buildings, yeah, for sure.
You don't have to take care of like the grounds and everything. It's like
Less maintenance, yeah.
there's a rent. See you later.
Yeah.
Boomers, maybe.
Baby boomers. What do you think affordability would have something to do with it from an investor's point of view?
Yeah.
Sure, price point. Obviously, if there's that many rental units, there's 2 things I see here. A, people want to buy them, and B, people want to live in them if there's that many, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand here. I just, I look at stuff and I think, okay, well, what's more to the story than just the number, right? And and that's probably why a lot of people just strictly invest in condos, because they know that there's going to be a decent amount of rental pool for that, specifically in the Toronto area. So some of the highlights out of this: Toronto vacancy rate reached a 16-year low at 1%. A lot of this information we go through tonight, if you've been coming and hopefully you've been listening, this won't be a surprise to you, right? A lot of this information. Home ownership affordability concerns kept more households in rentals. Why do you think that's a good thing for us as investors? A lot of renters. Typically, that's the higher echelon of the rental pool, right? Good for us. Supply of new private purpose-built rental units was, insufficient to meet growing demand. And again, that's not new to us. A lot of condo developers planned on building apartment buildings, and over the last year or so, with all the new restraints that the Landlord-Tenant Board or the Ontario government's put on us, so forget this. We can make easy money selling the actual units one by one. And for condo developers, or for developers, they look at what their ROI is. But you know what, something else they look at, and perhaps maybe we should look at it too sometimes, is the ease of making money. So they might, over the long haul, perhaps they can create more wealth in the apartment building and holding on to the real estate, but it's going to take a lot of work for them, right? A lot of management for them. Or if they can sell them today and recycle that money, it's the ease of money. And maybe that's an easier choice for them to make. Okay, let's move up to Barrie. 1.8, 3.4 for 2 bedrooms. I would say if you have a 3-bedroom, you can rent to almost anyone you want to, right? Because of the vacancy right there. Rates are ranging from, according to CMHC, $766 to $1,400. I would suggest perhaps those rates are actually even higher in real life for our units that perhaps we own. So I thought this was kind of interesting. This is the vacancy rate over the last 5-8 years, in fact, and it's had some dips and valleys, but we're kind of trending back up, right? And that, to me, is a couple of things. Perhaps there's more landlords providing more opportunities, more units, and having units come to the market, perhaps. This next one, this next slide is really interesting. Really, really interesting. I wish that wasn't there. That's okay. Cost to rent versus the cost to own. So dating back maybe about 2010, 2011, there's only about $200, $300 difference in what you're paying for rent and what perhaps that same home or a smaller home could have a mortgage for. And then obviously we see what skyrocketed in that big gap now, right? Couple things would say happened here. Obviously price increased for the value of the homes. What else perhaps increased? Pardon me? Cost of money, absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to see more renters stay here, right? That top echelon of renters that typically move into home ownership, they're going to stay as renters longer. This is good for us as investors if we're renting to that top group.
Except for if you're in single family.
Sorry?
Yeah, if you rent out a single family home, your costs are going up, but your rental
Yes.
does not.
Does not. And that's the problem here, because our costs from a utility standpoint, we try and pass that on as much as we can. From a single family home, we typically can, but from a tax, like or property taxes and insurance and everything else that goes up, usually it's not going up the same rate as what the rent, or as what rent we can do. Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, vacancy rates are a little bit higher there. Rents are kind of all over the place a little bit. Not much of a difference between 2 and 3 bedrooms. The thing here, though, is they have a huge rental pool, right, in that area. One of those reasons, and as you probably have already jumped to, is it is a huge university town. Universities are there, right, as opposed to just the develop or the economic part of the jobs. Similar stat here, though. We see a price gap of about $400 or $500 from a 2-bedroom, as opposed to carrying that cost, right? Now, some of the stuff here is because it's a student-led town for the most part. However, with a lot of the businesses moving there because of price point and because of the students that are coming out and actually living and staying there, we've done stats a long time ago. I remember reading a stat and sharing with you guys that where a student typically will go to school, they will, let me rephrase that, where a student goes to school, they'll typically live there after school. Which is to say, they're coming out with different degrees, and there's a high caliber of students that have graduated, so a lot of businesses are putting up shop there, as we know, to attract these students for jobs, right? So we're seeing that in some of those areas. Strong increase in demand for rental apartments offset 7% increases of supply. So we're kind of saying two different things here. So what's happening here is there were so many new condo developments and so many purpose-built apartment buildings in that area that it increased the supply by 7%. However, so did the demand for those rental units. So here's an area where that supply is actually staying in par, basically, with the demand. We don't see that in places like Toronto, for sure. Tenant turnover, 20%, over 20%. That is probably really, really high compared to the GTA and perhaps even Barrie. Students drive that. So understand where and why they're saying that number, right? Employment opportunities, I kind of addressed that. Okay, let's talk about Hamilton. Hamilton's still sitting about 2.2%, vacancy 1.7%. There's our rental rates there. That's about on par. Not much, no big surprise there. Here's a really neat stat that I pulled out of it, though. So more 25 to 44-year-olds in Hamilton were employed than these couple of years. From 2015 to 2016, you can see just over 160,000 of them were employed. To 2016, 2017, just we'll call it almost 180,000. So there's a difference of for easy math, we'll call it 20,000. What do you think would drive that? Price of homes. Pretty much nailed it. Yeah. That age group, that demographic, a lot of them are moving to Hamilton, which means a lot of businesses are opening up their doors in Hamilton and providing that. So the employment, or the opportunity for employment in Hamilton is great. Also, the opportunity to live within your means in Hamilton is great as well. Rental demand increased due to fewer renters transitioning into home ownership, so that's kind of the same across the board. Rent growth was strong as renters had few alternatives to choose from. Employment opportunities again there. Okay, next one. Let's get your phones out again. So here's one that we can use later on when we're networking. What location are you investing or would like to invest in? So what towns are you investing in? Peterborough. And if I see Hawaii there, you're my new best friend.
I can see that one.
Aurelia, Peterborough, Bradford, Oshawa. Peterborough's pretty big. I love it. Somebody just keep texting that. The same thing, isn't it? Barrie region. Cool. Cool. Here's what's neat about this is obviously the bigger ones are where people are investing the most, or that's been taxed the most. Newmarket, yes. Connect with these people at the break, or find out why they're investing in Oshawa or Aurelia, and talk to them. Right, network together. Okay, I said I would talk about this last month. This is an annual report. This is the second time that TREB has released it. And it's about 80 pages or so, and really what it is just what's happened in our market for the past year, what's happening this year, and a lot of the local mayors and councilors also submitted some information to create this report, and it's free for download. You can go find it on the TREB website. So I thought I'd go through it and kind of pull out the highlights, and some of the stuff you will know from stuff I've been saying in the past. So last year, and I mentioned this number, I think even last month, we had just over 92,000 sales, homes sold on the Toronto Real Estate Board last year. So that number's actually down from about 115,000 the year before. So we're going to come back to that number a couple of times throughout the presentation here. But we'll go with 92,000. When a home sells, Toronto Real Estate Board and the Atlas Group have found that when a home sells, it generates about $68,000 into the local market. Anything from, well, we'll look at it here in the next slide here. Anything from professional services, household purchases, furnitures, appliances, moving costs, renovations is a big one, and it just adds. It's almost like when a home sells, you know that that little local economy is going to get a little bump, right? And things are going to happen because of it. Here's what happens from those home sales. In 2014 to 2016, $2.9 billion went into taxes. So you got to imagine that the local governments, well, that's federal, provincial, municipal, love when a home sells, right? Because they get to reap these rewards. Now, obviously, that goes back into us eventually somehow in a roundabout way. But here's what I'm thinking, and perhaps you see this too, is we've had the Ontario government really, really do their part to slow down the market, right? Really do their part. What they're actually saying is they're okay to lose some of this tax revenue. So when you hear elected officials or even your neighbors say there's got to do something with the housing market, something has to be done. A lot of those people don't understand what that ramification is, because we're going to be taking revenue out of our governments when that happens, right? And it's happening right now. So I don't think they've actually fully thought this out on what the bottom line is going to mean to them. When we have a great real estate market, like we've had for the last, we'll call it even for the last 10 years or so, our economy's been really strong, right? Our local economy around here and where you live has been really strong, really, really strong. When that, and real estate is so important to just our little local GDP and everything. When that slows down, as we saw, right, when a home sells, it generates about $68,000 into the local market. When that market slows down, some of these things start to happen. Less and less happens, which means the GDP will go down, the local economy will go down. So that's why when people say, real estate, I don't understand it and this and that, it's such a huge fundamental to our just economic growth. So people really need, I think, not that we need to sit there and educate them, because not everyone wants to hear it or understands it, but as we talk to our joint venture partners, or we're talking about investing into the next property, we need to understand things like this. Here's the other thing that the Toronto Real Estate Board has figured out with Atlas Group. Of all those 92,000 sales last year, it generated just over 142,000 jobs last year, which is significant for the reasons we just talked about, right? Incredibly significant. And that is anything from me as a realtor to somebody as a lawyer to the mortgage broker, but just outside of that, the contractors, the people that deliver the garbage bins and everything, right? And you can just see how real estate is so powerful and what it can do to the local economy. So we talked here, 92,000 homes sold last year. However, there was an increase of 15% of listings from the previous year. So we had more choices last year, on average. At the beginning of the year, it didn't feel like it. But as it went on, we had more and more choices to choose from. So they also did some surveys. Do you own a second property? 22% of the people in Toronto said yes. The dark purple is yes, it's also rented out. A few of them are vacant, and then you can see the rest there, what that kind of boils down to. So I thought this was also interesting. Sorry, did you want that picture? Okay, got it.
That's so cool.
Good. Good. Got it. We saw this, if they had a vacancy tax, we know that they have a vacancy tax in Vancouver, and so they did some work here. What would that mean to the owners here in Toronto? So if a vacancy tax was introduced, this is kind of what it would look like. They had three ways to answer it. No impact to the investor would sell, or the investor would have to rent that out. So kind of think in your head where you think that would line up. And here's what the report tells us. 25% said who cares, and then you can see the rest. 37% said they would have to sell. 36% said that they would just go and rent that unit out. Now, of course, the golden rule here is, okay, well, how many vacant units there are? Well, that's the awesome thing. Nobody really knows, right? Nobody understands what that is. But to me, even if it was a few thousand, right? A few thousand vacant units coming to market, would that impact our market a little bit? I think so, right? I don't think they're going to do anything on the vacancy tax. Lack of supply, the missing middle. So who's heard this before, the missing middle? And what it's in reference to is, obviously here in the GTA and where we live we're very affluent in what we have, right? We live in nice homes, and there's a lot of people that live in those homes and bigger, and there's a lot of people that just can't. So they call that the missing middle. And I pulled this out of the report too, and it just kind of coincided with this hashtag that I was following on Twitter the other day. And they've come up with a number of years of supply represented by spare bedrooms in the GTA. So we're going to get our phones out again, and we're going to have some fun with this. How many years of supply do spare bedrooms represent? Is it less than 5 years? 6 to 10 years? 11 to 15 years, or 16 plus? Text your answer there. So I fall in that category of, if I think about my house, I actually have 2 spare bedrooms, right? So we're all kind of in that category, perhaps. So a lot of people choosing the top one, kind of split between the other 3. Are we good? Should we see where it lands? Hashtag the missing middle. So clearly A is leading, less than 5 years. You ready? 17 years of supply with spare bedrooms. Look what it is outside of the GTA, the Golden Horseshoe, 40 years. Outside, of course, we live in much bigger homes, right? Much bigger homes. So I don't know what we do with this information. I don't know if we start thinking, what?
That's where generational homes are going to come back in.
There you go. Yeah.
You're going to have 2, if not 3 generations back all living under the same roof.
I said I had 2 spare bedrooms, didn't I? Shoot.
We're gonna board up the extra rooms.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the Golden Girls. You're gonna have 2 single moms that are living in the same house,
Yeah.
sharing the costs. You're gonna have a lot of people turning to think outside the box. It might have been the norm for the last 25 years, but it can't be the norm moving forward.
Well, no, that's good points, Mandy. And it just, not that it can't, but at this moment, there's no other alternatives. So municipalities, and we've heard it here, and I've said it here in the past, are struggling to stay ahead of the developers' demands. Developers are saying, why does it take so long for my development to get approved? Well, that's just the policy that's in place. Like, it takes a few years for development to get off the ground. That's just the policy, right? So this, as Mandy said, this is going to be an opportunity for people to think outside the box.
Do the kids pay rent?
I would make them, or the parents pay rent, one of the two. Free food, yeah, something. Free babysitting, maybe that's what it is. Okay, first-time home buyers versus existing homeowners. So let's look at the top piece here. Toronto, 2017 versus 16, first-time home buyers to 16 was 60% of the market. Look what happened in 2017. It shifted. Look what happened, and don't worry about the bottom one here because that's just total. Look what happened in the 905. It actually increased in 2017 in the 905 area. Affordability, perhaps? Yeah. I bet you if we looked at that same number for Barrie or Hamilton, I would be almost certain it would be the other way around, for sure. For sure. Okay, this is the only slide I have on mortgage rates because Dion's our man. He's going to talk to us about mortgages. A quarter of the people said they would not qualify for the home that they currently live in now with the new rules. All right, I'll let Dion kind of dive into what that really looks like later. And I don't know what that means for those people that are renewing in a few years. If they renew at that with their existing mortgage, and it's kind of a no-brainer, that just happens. But if they want to pull equity out or change the mortgage, that could be an issue. So we might see a greater supply of homes come to market in the next couple of years with that as one of the main reasons. Okay, so the outlook. Let's see what the outlook is going to be for this year. Home time. Our real estate market will blank in 2018. Decline in price, stay flat, or increase slightly. What do we got? Oh, I like, we're all optimistic. Nothing, we're not going to decline.
No, we're wishing.
And then
Stay
someone
flat.
throws it in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, someone put that just because I said that now. Stay flat. Okay, good. That seems to be the clear leader. Stay flat. Well, let's see what TREB says. So remember, TREB is an organization that has the largest amount of realtors in it in any association in the world. So when they do their research, they spend their time doing their research and they dig deep. Number of sales. So remember, we did 92,000 sales last year, right? This is what TREB is suggesting is going to happen this year, between 85 and 95. Stay flat, right? How about the average price? Average price last year was 822,000 in the Toronto Real Estate Board. So that's a big area, right? But let's just work with that number. 822,000. TREB is saying 800 to 850. That's pretty much them saying, same thing. Yeah. So, to me, here's what's happening according to TREB. They don't see the market jumping up. They don't see the bottom falling out on it. It's just going to stay very, very flat. And why would they say that? A couple of things that we're already seeing down south of us. So south of Steeles, right, in the Toronto market. I talked to my colleagues there. They are already seeing multiple offers this year. And agents are having to work hard to get their offers accepted. Now the fortunate piece is people are deciding not to do those crazy numbers, which is the good piece, right? Sellers are still very realistic in the pricing that they're setting. So if a home is valued at 800, they're not trying to shoot for the million. They're listing it for what it's valued at, and they're attracting buyers for it. So what do we know that happens in York Region or up in Barrie that happens in Toronto? It eventually gets up to those areas, right? It ripples up. So do I expect to see that? I expect to see some of that to an effect. Will we see what happened last spring? Well, not according to what TREB says, and not according to really what we're seeing so far in the market, because there's just less buyers in the market at this point, and there's still a lot of choices, right? If you pull up any little local listings, you'll probably see about 3 to 4 months at least worth of inventory, whereas last year it was maybe 2.5 weeks. So still lots of choices, right? Lots and lots of choices. So that's the TREB review outlook. Love to talk to you about that afterwards. If you have some questions about it, it can be downloaded. Just search up TREB review or 2018 review, and the download link is there. Same with all of the CMHC reports. I just go under CMHC, go into some of the reports, and the stuff that I pulled today was just all the rental reviews. And they'll do that about once a quarter, and it's great information. It's really, especially if it allows you to educate for what it is and where you're buying, and being able to talk to your JV partners, so it's good. So be in the know, right? That's something I always say. Be in the know. Don't always take my word for it. Go read it for yourself, because that's how you're going to remember it too. And